You didn't mean to cause problems, you just revealed what they needed to keep hidden. And that's why you became the problem. If you grew up labeled the dramatic one, the sensitive one, the difficult one, the one who always makes an issue out of everything, stay for this video. You'll want to hear this. Hi, I'm Elle, the voice behind Childhood Decoded. Today I'm sharing research that helped me understand my role as the truth teller in my toxic family. I'll be sharing what the science says about why it happens, what it does to your brain and body, and what it reveals about who you actually are. Let's get into it. Every family is a system, and systems have one job: remain stable. That doesn't mean healthy and it doesn't mean honest, just stable. Murray Bowen, the psychiatrist who developed family systems theory in the 1950s and 60s, observed that families function less like a collection of individuals and more like a single emotional organism. When one part of that organism is threatened, the whole system mobilizes to protect itself. In a dysfunctional family, stability means the lie stays intact. Bowen described this as family homeostasis, the automatic, often unconscious drive to return to a familiar emotional state, even when that state is unhealthy. The family resists change. It pushes back against anything that disrupts the pattern, and nothing disrupts the pattern like the truth. So when you said out loud what everyone ignored, you didn't just upset them. You became a threat to the entire system. Research has a very specific name for the role you were assigned: the identified patient. In clinical literature, the identified patient is the family member used as the container for the family's unresolved conflict. They're the one labeled the problem, the one brought to therapy, the one the family organizes its dysfunction around. The researchers found that, in many families, the identified patient is actually the least disturbed member of the group. They're not manufacturing drama. They're responding accurately to a system that is genuinely broken. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Psychology by Vignando and Bizumic examined 504 adults and found that scapegoating was a key mechanism linking parental narcissism to anxiety and depression in children. Higher perceived parental narcissism, both grandiose and vulnerable types, led directly to increased scapegoating, which then predicted elevated anxiety and depression in those children. The pain you carry has a documented, measurable pathway. It was not generated inside you. It was placed there by the very people who were supposed to protect you. Neuroscience shows exactly how that happened inside your brain. When you grow up in a home where your perception of reality is constantly denied, minimized, or punished, something happens in your nervous system that goes well beyond feelings. Researchers at McGill University and the University of Toronto published a theoretical framework in 2025 explaining gaslighting through predictive processing, the way your brain builds its model of reality. Their work proposes that gaslighting exploits your brain's most fundamental trust mechanism. We rely on close relationships to verify our experience of the world. When the people closest to you repeatedly override your perception, your brain begins to doubt its own signals. And the biology goes further. Chronic emotional invalidation weakens the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and emotional regulation, while simultaneously expanding the amygdala, your brain's threat detection center. Research published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences documented that chronic stress causes the amygdala to grow, while the structures that regulate the stress response, including the prefrontal cortex, are weakened and reduced. Your brain was rewired to live in constant threat. A 2020 meta-analysis published in JAMA Psychiatry found that children who experienced emotional maltreatment were 2.3 times more likely to develop depression and 2.7 times more likely to develop anxiety disorders compared to those who didn't experience such treatment. This is documented, measurable neurological and psychological damage. You didn't develop anxiety because something was wrong with you. You developed anxiety because your threat detection was accurate. You correctly read a dangerous environment, and your brain adapted to survive it. There's actually a name for the specific pattern that rewired your sense of reality every time you tried to speak up about what you saw. It's called DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. The term was coined by psychologist Dr. Jennifer Freed. Here's how it works in a toxic family. Deny. They say it didn't happen, or it wasn't that bad, or you're misremembering it. Attack. They go after your credibility, your emotional stability, your reputation within the family. Reverse. By the end of the conversation, somehow you became the one who caused harm. You hurt them by saying what you said. A 2023 study by Zimmerman and colleagues, working with 230 participants, found that exposure to DARVO caused people to rate perpetrators as less responsible and more believable, while rating the person who spoke up as more abusive and less credible. And Freud's own research found that higher levels of DARVO exposure during confrontations were directly linked to increased self-blame in the person who told the truth. Every time you tried to name the reality you were living in, you were being trained to see yourself as the problem. That was not accidental. That was the system working exactly as designed. Here's what the research tells us about what this does to someone over a lifetime. The AC study, the landmark collaboration between Kaiser Permanente and the CDC, and one of the largest investigations of childhood trauma ever conducted, found a dose-response relationship between adverse childhood experiences and health outcomes. More ACEs, worse outcomes. An ACE score above 6 was associated with a 30-fold increase in attempted suicide. A 2025 systematic review and meta-analysis published in Trauma, Violence, and Abuse confirmed that ACEs are significant risk factors for depression, anxiety, PTSD, and suicidality in adulthood. The strongest pooled association was found for PTSD. The saddest part, in my opinion, is that this trauma doesn't stop with you. Research on epigenetics, including studies of Holocaust survivors and their offspring, has shown that trauma can alter gene expression across generations. A 2016 paper in Biological Psychiatry by Yehuda and colleagues found specific DNA methylation changes in the FKBP5 gene, a gene that regulates the stress response, in both Holocaust survivors and their children. What happened in your family may already be written into your biology, but there can be a happy ending. When you heal, you are not just healing yourself. You may be changing the biological inheritance of everyone who comes after you. I want to close on something the research is consistent about, and that doesn't get said clearly enough. The child chosen for the truth teller role, the identified patient commonly known as the scapegoat, is typically the most emotionally perceptive member of the family. You were targeted because you were the most threatening. You saw what they needed kept hidden. You felt what they refused to name. You told the truth that would have dismantled the story they've been protecting for so long. The system didn't attack you because you were fragile. It attacked you because you were accurate. If you spent your whole life being told you were too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic, what you were actually being told was this: you see too clearly for this family and it makes us uncomfortable. Today we covered what the science says about the truth teller role in a toxic family, why systems punish honesty, what the scapegoat role does to your brain and nervous system, and what being chosen for that role actually reveals about who you are. Understanding this doesn't resolve everything overnight, but it does give you the ability to start separating what was placed on you from what actually belongs to you. Tell me in the comments, did you click on this video because you're the truth teller in your family? If so, how has it affected you in adulthood? I would genuinely love to know. If this kind of research-based content helps you make sense of your own story like it does for me, subscribe. And if you want to go deeper on emotionally immature parenting and what it actually does to a child's development, that video is next. Just a reminder, everything I share here is for educational purposes. It's not a substitute for working with a therapist or mental health professional. This is Elle from Childhood Decoded. I'll see you in the next one.